Pam Oster grew up in the small town of Hurley, Missouri. Her dad was employed by the feed mill there, and Mom worked in the garment factory. Pam has one sister, Sandy. She was really active when she was in high school. She was a cheerleader, and she was the president of the student council. One year, when Pam was ready to go into home economics, she decided she didn't really want to go into home economics, so she signed up for shop. She was the only girl there, but she thoroughly enjoyed it. So when Pam graduated from high school, she attended St. John's Hospital School of Nursing for Radiological Technology, and she became a registered technologist. So now it's time to have a conversation with Pam. Early in your career, Pam, you came to Oklahoma. How did that come about?
Well, I was finishing up school in Springfield, and we were all looking for jobs, for after graduation. And a friend of mine came back to visit everyone at school, and he had a job in Parsons, Kansas. And I said, you know anybody that needs a tech? And he said, I do. I know 2 places. And he sent me the addresses, and I arranged for interviews and got the job at both places. I had to decide which one I wanted. The other one was in Ark City. And I took the one here in Ponca City, and there went my career.
Got it started.
Yes.
Got it started.
Yes.
Okay, well then you came to Oklahoma City.
Actually, I came to Ponca City first, and then they put me in radiation therapy. And I'd had training in radiation therapy, but training and doing it is kind of 2 different things. I realized I didn't have enough knowledge. So then I moved to Oklahoma City and went back to school for a year, and then I came back to Ponca, and they hired me back, and I ran the therapy unit.
So you went to school at University of Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm.
Well, back in Ponca City, you met your husband, so tell us about that time in your life.
Well, he was my boss, and we just had so much fun together. We were always cutting up at work, and that's not necessarily a good thing when you're dealing with patients. But we did. We enjoyed each other's company, and we dated a while and then got married. It was just easy.
Okay. And how long were you married?
We were married 27 years when I lost him. So.
Okay. You have 2 boys?
I do.
Tell us about that.
My oldest is Andrew. He is a certified financial planner here in Oklahoma City, and he married the love of his life, and they have 2 beautiful twins. My youngest son lives in Champaign, Illinois, and he's a computer engineer. He works for VM Company. It's a software company. They have 2 children, one that's almost 2.5, and the other is 4. They're the center of my life.
I suppose you don't get to see your grandchildren who live in Champaign quite as much.
I don't, but I FaceTime almost once a week. So the little one who barely knows me gets on and says, "Hi, Gigi."
Well, the phone can do wonderful things. It is a great thing to have, be able to keep in touch with them. But and you see your grandchildren here
all the time.
All the time. While the boys were growing up, you were involved in several activities involving their lives.
Yes. It seemed like I was always around. One of my children said to me, "Mom, you're always there," which made me feel good.
So what were some of those activities?
They, besides tennis and the regular things that kids do, they were both in Scouts.
Okay.
I felt like that was a good place for them to be planted to avoid issues in the school system that you can't avoid other ways. And it kept them busy. I never let my kids be unoccupied. Mm-hmm. And I went right along with them. I started out as a den mother and came up through the ranks. I was a cub master. When my kids were in Boy Scouts, I was on the committee, and I sat on a lot of boards of review for Eagle Scouts. And I'm proud to say both of my boys are Eagle Scouts.
Yeah. Okay. You were on that review board for 30 or 40 years, weren't you?
Well, maybe not quite that long, but it was a long time. I still have adults come up to me and say, "You were on my board of review," and that just kind of makes your day.
Sure.
And then I personally worked for the National Boy Scout office and did National Camping School for the Boy Scouts of America. And
what impacted that camping experience? How long did you do that? You did that for quite a while.
Well, I did it for 4 or 5 years. And, people came in from all over the country for those training sessions because that's for adults. It's to train adults how to do things for the kids. We focused on safety. We focused on, qualifications that the kids could earn while they were in camp. It was just an overall experience so that kids would be safer when they went to camp in the summers. That was our biggest concern.
So how many people did you teach overall, do you think?
Each session usually had about 30 to 40, and mixed, men and women. It didn't matter what gender they were. And we did things like teaching them how to cook on a campfire. We did things like, my favorite was the games. I taught the games and the songs and the things like that you could do, because boys love to sing, especially if it's a little raunchy.
Well, you also were involved in FHA and FFA. You did tell me that.
But neither one of my kids were in that organization. But I'm a calligrapher, among other things, and a lady that used to do the calligraphy, and they make these large books that are all of their accomplishments throughout the year. And what they have done is, written out there and tells everybody what they have accomplished throughout the year. These are repeated every year. And I was invited to do one year because the lady that had always done them for years became ill, and then she ended up moving away. And so I did them, and it was a lot of fun. It was kids that I'd never met, and yet I got to know them by what I had to put on paper. It was interesting.
So you did the writing, the calligraphy in their books.
Yes.
So was it for each? Did each individual get a book, or
yes.
was it okay?
Yes.
So it wasn't like the scout group or troop.
No.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. Do you do calligraphy now?
It's interesting you say that. Just the other day I got out some pens. My arthritis has kind of slowed all that down, and I haven't done any for a number of years, any consequence. But I've done a lot. In fact, there's a guy in western Oklahoma that wrote a book, and he asked me to calligraphy his. No, it was one of the poems he had written, so he could give it to his brother. And so I did that, and that's when you're doing it for somebody in a situation like that, you kind of are nervous that you'll leave out a letter or a word, and I've done that. I had to start all over.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, it is an art form. It certainly is.
I guess it is. Yeah.
So for several years, you have belonged to a women's organization, PEO. What can you tell us about that group?
PEO is a secret society for women. We tell everyone that it stands for a philanthropic education organization because our main thrust is educating women. If women have dropped out of college and want to go back, we offer assistance, financial assistance. If their life has changed and they want to go back to school and can't afford it, we help with that. We've given away millions and millions of dollars over the years.
In scholarship money.
In scholarship money.
Right.
And then usually a local chapter will sort of take them on as a grandchild and provide them with birthday cards and little gift cards and things like that to help them out too. It's an international organization, so we go far and wide.
And there are several chapters in each state, too.
Oh,
It
yes.
isn't like there's just one.
Yes. Here in Oklahoma, there's at least 7, and then I think there's 3 in Edmond. So, I mean, there are a lot in some states.
Okay. You have a special fondness for music, handbills in particular. Do you want to explain about that?
I do. I had never touched a handbell until my kids were in a church choir. And the choir director there I knew quite well. And I told him I thought I would like to do it. And he said, well, you know music, you shouldn't have any problem. So I thought, okay, let's see what we can do. And he said, if you can find 6 other people and yourself, we'll start a new choir, a beginner's choir. And I think he thought I couldn't do that. And I did. So we started off, and that's 20 odd years ago, 25 years ago probably, and it's become part of my life. I love handbells, and I've played a lot of places, and with a lot of groups. When I was in Ponca, I played in 3 different groups, and here in Oklahoma City, I played in 2 different groups. So which do you like, the big bells or the little bells? I used to play the small bells because I can play 4 in hand, and you can't do that with big bells.
Yeah, no, I would guess not.
And not that many people can play 4 in hand, so you need to be at the other end of the table.
You said you like to travel, so where have you been?
Oh, you know, I looked the other day. I've been in 30 different countries. I've been Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, China. I've been all through Europe, a lot of places in Europe. And my favorite place in the whole wide world is Hawaii.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't think you're alone in that aspect.
I'm sure I'm not.
Have you been there more than once?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So do you continue to travel there, or?
Well, I haven't traveled any big, trips. Gosh, for probably 3 years. But I've had medical issues that's kind of kept me at home.
Those come first. You call yourself an animal lover. So.
I am. You put an animal in front of me and I melt. I started when I lived in Ponca City doing rescue for Dobermans. There's an organization it's in Minnesota, I don't remember the town. And they are able to find and capture loose Dobermans, and they dogleg them up to Minnesota by with people like me that want to get involved. And you meet somebody somewhere that's in the organization as well. It's not like going to meet a stranger. But then we exchange the dogs and take them on the road. And one of my worst experiences was she was the sweetest Doberman I've ever seen, but she was dog aggressive. And I got her out to go to the bathroom and get some water. And she jerked on the lead and broke my wrist. So that was not a good experience. But most of them wanted to crawl in your lap while you were driving. That was the worst.
So eventually what brought you to Edmond, Oklahoma, and then eventually to Epworthville?
My mother was ill, and I tried keeping her with me for a long time, and that didn't work out. She ended up in a nursing facility in Ponca City, which was fine for a while, and then as her dementia progressed, she was too much for them to handle. And they asked me to put her in another facility, and after searching, I found one that would take her. And I was driving back and forth from Ponca City to Oklahoma City 4 and 5 times a week. That's 200 miles round trip. And I was getting a little haggard with that process. And my son one day said to me, "Mom, I really don't want to have to scrape you up off the highway someday. Why don't you move down here?" And at first I kind of rejected it because I was president of my PEO in Ponca City and still had a lot of things going on. But the more I thought about it, it made perfect sense. but I only wanted to move one time. I didn't want to move into a house or an apartment. I didn't want to do that at all. But this kind of place didn't dawn on me for the longest time. And as I thought about it, I finally decided, yeah, this was the kind of place I needed. I knew several people that had lived here before through my church in Ponca City, and they really enjoyed it, really loved it here. So I looked at 2 or 3 other places, but when I came here, there was just kind of no doubt this was where I belonged. And my kids are happy that I'm here. And I'm glad. I didn't want a daughter-in-law to take care of me through the end of my life, and sons don't do a good job of that sort of thing. So I'm perfectly happy here.
Well, it's a wonderful choice you made, and
I think so.
You're just a wonderful neighbor.
Thank you.
Pam, you've had such an interesting and diversified life. You've had so many rewarding experiences, it seems. It's just been a delight to hear your story. So thanks so much for sharing that with us.